Hi, everyone, and welcome to the NBCU Academy Next Level Summit. This is going to be the breakout session about media, technology, and digital work. I'm Antonia Hylton, and I'm a correspondent here at NBC News and MSNBC, and I'm also the co-host of the Southlake podcast. Look, even in a shaky economy, tech jobs continue to grow. And, media is an industry that is constantly hiring. Look on any journalism job site, and you'll see that there continue to be dozens of opportunities, whether it's in media, in journalism, or in tech-related roles in this field. The problem is often young people do not know where they should get their start or what positions are going to show a lot of growth. So thankfully, I have a group of wonderful panelists here with me to help us make sense of all of this, including NBCUniversal leaders as well as leaders in the nonprofit space. So let me introduce you to them. First, we have Ming, NBCUniversal News Group. He is the SVP of Product and Design here. Then we have Wayne Warner, our Product Engineering Vice President. Next, we have John Perez, Telemundo Noticias News Production Senior Vice President. And then we have Dwana Franklin Davis, the CEO of Reboot Representation. Thank you all so much for being here with me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Al, I would love to start with you, Al. You're in charge of product and design here at NBC. Walk me through, what encompasses some of the roles on your team and what might be of interest to some emerging or aspiring journalists right now.
For sure. So a lot of what we do in the product design and engineering organization for NBCUniversal News Group is figure out what the right experiences should be like for our customers. How do we take the content that we produce from our journalists and our teams and put it in the right place at the right time for our customers? Not just what it looks like and how do you get to it, but how do we take advantage of technology and design and our understanding of the customer to make it as valuable as possible to our people? So some of the jobs that might be of interest are jobs like product managers. If you're interested and curious about why digital products are successful and you want to help build them to be that, that's a job where you figure out what the right things are we should do. What should we build? What are the features we should create that will be most valuable? If one of your strengths is having a keen visual eye, you might be interested in becoming a designer to figure out what the user experience looks like in our websites and apps and other products, and how it should behave to be as easy and useful for those customers. If maybe you're really detail-oriented and you like bringing people together and building strong teams, you might be interested in project management, where we organize the work that we do, align our teams together to most quickly and effectively launch our products and services. And if you like interviewing, if that's a strength that you've had in journalism, if you like talking to people and figuring out what they want, you might be interested in being a researcher, digging in with our customers to find out what they actually want and need, what our products are that work for them and don't work for them, and putting new things in front of them to show them what's possible. Maybe you're interested in finding ways to bring our content to new platforms like social and newsletters and taking advantage of marketing. Audience development might be the job for you. Or if you're good at copy and copywriting and you want to take Google on head on, you might want to be an SEO manager, helping our teams to figure out the right ways to write our copy and headlines and organize our content in ways that machines and customers coming in from the outside might be able to reach.
Wayne, how is that similar or different to the work that your team does on the engineering side? And how closely do you get to work with journalists?
For sure. So actually, Al's team and mine work really closely together. In my title, I have product engineering because my teams are responsible for helping to build out that product, as Al just mentioned. We typically do get to work fairly close with journalists, depending on the different roles within my organization and generally around tech. I'll talk about a few of them to kind of give a sense of that as well. One of the primary jobs within my organization is a front-end engineer. That's someone who's actually building the experience that our users will use to read our journalism, to enjoy it across a number of platforms, whether it be the web, your mobile phone, your connected TV, Alexa. And we're even responsible for, earlier you heard Sam Swartz talking about the big board today. Sam Swartz is in my org as well, and So we really, our front end engineers really help to build these things out across any platform as needed. But also in tech, we've got our back end engineers, which provide the service level APIs and architecture to allow all this content to get from point A to point B. You know, and when a journalist writes that content, it's got to get out to the websites or out to your phone, and they do that work. And they also do the work to make sure that we syndicate our content out to other platforms like Apple News, Yahoo, anywhere that our users are. We want to get that content to them as expediently as we can. Some of our other engineers that work really closely with journalists are our data visualization engineers, who are responsible for looking at a corpus of data, helping the journalists to analyze that and to using technology and graphic design to build that into something that conveys and communicates the actual meaning of the data, which would be less easy to understand on its own, right? Some of our engineers that work a little bit less with journalists, but still do provide a ton of value for them are our machine learning engineers, who are responsible for building out the AI pipelines, building out the systems to automate predictive modeling that allows us to deeply understand what our users are engaged with and what they want to learn about, what they want to read about, and then that, in many cases, may inform our journalism to just give us a sense of what users want, and we can learn from that to continue to tell them and share with them the best and most impactful stories. And again, that's just some of the folks that we have, but we do generally work with journalists as much as we can, so that we also deeply understand the mission and engage with it, so we can build the best products.
So will both of your teams be working closely with the newsrooms as we get closer and closer to the midterm elections?
For sure. We've been working round the clock, getting ready for the midterms across, again, multiple platforms, on TV, on web, on all these different devices, and working with journalists to really understand what stories they're trying to tell, give them the right tools so that they can do their job and tell the right story as it changes and morphs. That's something that we take a lot of pride in. And I think when we do that, we get really great experiences on our products.
Thank you. John, I want to bring you in. Talk to me a bit about the opportunities available at Telemundo, how they may be different from or connected to what John and Wayne have just described.
Yeah, from our standpoint, our team really works with the productions of all the shows that are properties of Noticias Telemundo. What we normally do is coordinate with producers, executive producer, whatever they need related to studio operations, especially elections right now that we are getting ready for the midterm. And we have a really big setup here. We normally have a studio and operations manager that works with the show, coordinating everything that they need in the studio, from augmented reality to any type of graphic necessity for the shows, and works with the technical and operations team to provide those services to all the shows. In addition to that, we handle the field operation for news. Field operation, we have one of our managers that coordinates with all our photographers, the daily assignments that are requested. In addition to that, he handles field operation, meaning productions that relate to news on the field, covering breaking news and helping in any way possible. We also have the photographers that are right now taking courses to operate drones, because it's very important in the news operation to have these type of resources.
To what extent does your team reflect the community that you cover?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
To what extent do your teams reflect the communities that you cover?
Oh, we reflect them pretty well. We make sure that we get involved with the community, find out what production values that we need to provide to help the community itself.
Thank you. And Dwana, the mission of your organization is to get more Black, Latina, and Indigenous women into these jobs. What are some of the roles that you're seeing that are, frankly, missing us? And what kind of gaps do you want to see filled?
Ooh, loaded question. In today's space, Black and brown people make up 3% of the tech population. And for Reboot, our specific focus and intention is for Black, Latina, Native, and Indigenous Americans to obtain baccalaureate degrees. And we want them to achieve that baccalaureate degree so they can aspire to be in the spaces they want to go and also be able to thrive and be future leaders in those spaces. And so this specific population is the least represented in tech. And so there's a saying, rising tides raise all ships. So when you are intentionally focused on the least represented, it helps create opportunities for the entire space. So tech in general needs some work, but when you start to dive deeper into those specialty areas in tech, so as we're talking about AI or artificial intelligence, VR, as we're talking about cybersecurity, machine learning, gaming, those are spaces and environments and fields that have even fewer representation of women of color and people of color in general. So all of that, we need some work. We need to be intentional about it. And those are spaces that are going to benefit from being able to have diversity of thought and diversity of experiences and benefit the masses.
It looks like our next panelist is actually ready to join us. We have one more person who's going to join us named Michael Ellison, founder and CEO of CodePath. Let's see, I'll wait one more second to see if Michael's able to join us. If not, oh, Michael, is that you?
We did it.
Welcome to the party. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Dwana just told me a bit about her team's mission. Tell me about your mission.
Yep. So CodePath, we're an educational nonprofit, and we're focusing on diversifying the nation's most competitive software engineering roles. And very, very important for us to focus on. When I say most competitive, I'm talking about, what are the opportunities that have the most influence, the most power. We're leading technology teams. They also command the high salaries. So economic mobility is very important. We also are very, very focused on how do we change the default pathway into technical careers. If you're talking about default, you're talking about colleges, universities. So CodePath is a layer on top of these schools to try to rewire the student experience so that, instead of students from backgrounds where they're often marginalized, often not being able to make it into these competitive roles, what if we give them the unfair competitive advantage to succeed? So that's a little bit about CodePath.
Thank you. Al, when you're creating NBC products, how important is it that your team is diverse?
It's very important. I mean, there's something we say about the way that we understand our customers, which is that you don't have to be your audience to understand your audience, but it also helps. The idea of having diverse perspectives on your team makes it easier and reduces a lot of the friction for your team to understand and empathize with your audience and know what they want and what they're motivated by. And in some cases, while we can do the work, like we said earlier, with people like researchers and audience development people and product managers, it still helps to have those voices in the room because there's, you don't know what you don't know, right? There's questions we don't even know to ask unless we're in the room and hearing the opportunity and realizing in the moment that there is a nuance or an insight or a question that our audiences might have that we need to pay attention to. So it certainly helps.
Wayne, how have these considerations affected your team? I mean, it's interesting to me because I think at times people think about these conversations as sort of being either or on opposite ends, one side considering diversity and community and experience, and the other just being, data and technology driven. Is that true? Are they really separate?
I don't think they are. I think, to Al's point, when you have different perspectives in the room, whether, different ways that we can talk about diversity, whether it's, race or gender or age, or there's many ways to kind of look at it. I think you get different perspectives, which lead to better outcomes. Al really touched on it, this idea that, if folks are not in the room, folks may not be thinking about the problems that people face. I think the same with tech. It's less so to some degree, but because again, my teams are so connected to our product, it's critical for us to think about it as well. I think one really nice thing about technology and code is it's just code. It's very blind to all these details. So you can kind of, you have that safe space, but again, the world is around it, right? And as the world, as we better understand our world together, I think we do end up producing better code and, building a great place to work as well.
We obviously think a lot about innovation in the space and in here, and it can only be a good thing to have more voices, more perspectives to generate that creativity, to create that kind of divergent thought pattern.
Do either of you have an experience you can share, whether it's your own experience or, that of a team member who was able to point you all in a different direction or come up with an idea that was based on a lived experience they had that maybe others didn't?
I have one that I think about all the time when, especially when I'm interviewing candidates, they ask me like, what's one thing that makes me proud to work here? One experience I had was, I think it was midterms 2018, and we were working on the big board in an earlier iteration of the big board with a much smaller team. And we're up till, I don't know, at that point it was maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. And we were trying to get every last feature in. And everyone was tired, right? Everyone's beaten down. We'd worked so hard to try to get to this point. We still had some work though to support Telemundo, right? We actually wanted to share the big board with them, and I think it would have been on Hoy Dia the next day. But everyone was so tired, and someone on my team just really pointed out to me that, the folks that are going to see this content on Telemundo, they need this content to really understand what are they going to vote for, who are they going to vote for in the morning. And I think that message to just think differently, like you're tired, but here's the focus is about making sure we get our content out to everybody. It just inspired me, inspired the rest of the team. We finished the work and we got everything out for the morning. And it was really great in the morning to turn on. I was tired, but turning on the TV, seeing it on Telemundo, and knowing that millions of people are seeing this really was great. And I think that moment just, that wouldn't have happened without that person being from New York and thinking about all the people that they know and who would not be represented or not be served if we were to just be tired and give up in that moment.
Absolutely. And I should add, as one of the journalists who's been aided by your teams at times, when we are tired and struggling to make sense of our stories, often having that there is really make or break. I mean, it is what allows the audience to understand what's happening, when all else fails. I want to bring in some questions from our audience as well. So we have a question from Maria Perez Diaz. She asks, I recently went back to school and did a coding boot camp in web development. How do I find a role where I can use my new skills? And I'll give this to anyone ready to take it.
Well, I look like somebody else is going to talk.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to share because I think a lot of my career has been focused on you're from a low-income background, you don't know anyone, you have no connections, don't have a network. How do you find the way to get in the room? How do you find the way to arm yourself with the advantages so that you can actually succeed? So I think very unconventionally in that, trying to break in from web development. I actually, there's a podcast from one of my friends called Breaking Into Startups, where It's about his journey that he's just trying to figure out how he could break into not just any tech job, but really competitive, hard technology jobs. And the way I would say most important is thinking about how you can build your network champions, mentors, not one or two, but how can you have an army? How can you have so many people helping to, and let's put different categories. There's people who will put you into that opportunity. There's other people who will just talk about you. There's others who will, guide you, advice, and helping you to improve. You need a lot of those. And I would recommend to be very aggressive. I don't leave things to chance, whether it's going to the different meetup groups. And you might be surprised how accessible a lot of really excellent engineers are. Your goal is, web development, great. Well, who are the best people in your community, locally? They might be organizing different meetups, make friends, connect with them, collaborate, because a lot of people are very approachable and open and interested if they see someone who's really hungry. One example, my co-founder and CTO, he started his first company when he was 14 years old. He hacked the old black and white iPods, found people online via development communities. He was low income, LA Cuban immigrant, and he met people online because of his interest in technology who wanted to collaborate with him. And then he ended up having this incredible company, first third-party software in the Apple Store, based on connections, network, the authenticity that he was very passionate about learning. But I think the network is incredibly important, but the curation of the right people who are going to give you the most leverage.
Dwana, one of your goals is to double the representation of these groups, Black, Latina, Indigenous women in these spaces by 2025, right? How are we going to get there?
We are sprinting a marathon right now. And I guess to elaborate on that, the way that Reboot is supporting that sprint towards the marathon is through partnerships, both on the corporate side. So corporations join the coalition. We are then able to pool that funding and make a greater impact on nonprofits that have programs and initiatives in alignment with our mission. Those same nonprofits tend to be maybe overlooked or underfunded. And again, based off of data and research, those organizations were not being funded at all in 2017. So with that, we need to be intentional. We need to make sure that as we are designing these interventions, they're what is actually going to make those necessary improvements to help the people that we're trying to serve overcome the barriers and overcome those hurdles. And so that may mean we need to add some wraparound services. So depending on who we're talking about or which organizations we're partnering with, that means different things to different organizations, and that could even be regional. For example, in New York City, a student may need access to a Metro Pass, whereas in Miami, we may need to allot for more virtual learning if they're not able to commute to the many campuses that are around the metro area. So really identifying those needs, and then how do we focus and look at all of the points where there could be those blockers? So what are the systems that are in place that need intentional change? We did that with one of our partners, and they reflected internally and said, wow, they had this crazy map and looked like a bird's nest of all the points that were blockers to women of color entering into their system, and they changed it. So that grant funding is going to impact students for years to come, and not just the students that are going to graduate in 2025.
I have another audience question. This one's from Elliot Trito. What are ways that I can get better at data literacy?
That's an interesting question. not exactly sure what angle, but I think similar to what Sam was saying earlier when I watched earlier in the summit. Just dive into to data, whether it be from a technological standpoint, from an analysis standpoint. Look at the field. What are folks doing with data, and try to learn from that. But data literacy it's kind of hard to pin down exactly what to answer there. But I think just getting in there. Also, one thing that's really helpful, or has helped me quite a bit, is taking classes. I think there are a lot of great tools for learning these days, way better than there were 10 to 20 years ago. So take advantage of them. There's a lot of things you can learn for free. Folks that are in school, make sure that you're in those classes where you can learn about data, and then find a real world application that's meaningful to you, that will engage you. Whether it be, there's data in news, there's data in sports, there's data in fashion, there's data in everything. You can find something that makes you interested, and I think that will help you to get as far as you can get with it.
Yeah, you probably already know a lot of the places you can take those online classes: Khan Academy, Coursera, Udemy. Like, all of these have data courses that you can take a look at. I would also plug a newsletter that I read, Flowing Data, which also has a site, flowingdata.com, that talks a lot about data visualization. It includes a lot of the kind of journalism lenses on data that can be good just as a starting point to see how others are engaging with data and content at scale and finding new insights that came out of them.
Thank you. The next audience question, John, I'd love to direct this to you. This comes from Noeli Portillo. What resources or programs does NBCUniversal or Telemundo have to help people, grow their education and get out there, grow more technical skills?
I think it's important for people to take training in technology, learn as much as they can that could provide insight regarding the technology that we normally use in news and other areas.
Do you think we have enough Spanish-speaking people in these key roles?
I think right now we are having a lot of Spanish-speaking in journalism. One of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of students in the journalism field, and I think it's very important in production, especially news. A lot of these journalism students could be in front of the camera, even behind the camera, working with news gathering desk or the editorial team, the research team. In addition to that, I think it's very important for them to learn part of the technology side of it, so that when they become maybe a producer or executive producer, they really understand the tech side of how the operation goes.
Thank you. Michael, I kind of want to go back to the question about data literacy and skills. And I know that data literacy is very, very broad. So I think it might be helpful to spell out for some folks some of the basic things that they can do to basically get smarter, right? Not everyone needs even a degree in journalism to do this work. So what are the skills you would say people need? And are they technical? Are they more general? What are the basic steps you'd recommend if someone's trying to get an entry-level job in tech right now?
Yep. Well, I'd say that let's just think of digital literacy and think of what people can do in order to maximize their future opportunities, regardless of anything that they'd want to go into, just based on how the world's changing. So analytics and data. There's a lot of platforms where they have decreased the level that you need to be to start to leverage those powerful tools. Platforms like Alteryx are an example. A lot of these startups and organizations and technology companies also have a lot of these free resources, but the whole idea is how can we democratize the access to these tools? And I think that's also a very important thing to point out. Technology is just a tool that allows you to more effectively, more efficiently do something. At one point you go from New York to Boston and it's a horse or you're walking. And then another point it's a car, another point it's a train. So I think the goal is most importantly, a comfort with learning new software, leveraging new tools, leveraging new technologies. Coding, right? There's lots of different technologies, but it's like a use case, right? I'm building a mobile application. I'm building a website. I'm trying to solve some aspect related to enterprise scale and operations. So that comfort level with learning new things, not being intimidated when something is technical or software, is key. Now, there are certain foundational skills that a developer has, which I think are really, really helpful. Debugging. What is debugging? Well, your app doesn't work, and you have to figure out how to fix it. And you have to be really efficient at stat breaking. Where do I go, and how do I find the information that then leads me to truth to actually be able to solve a problem? So a lot of these skills, which the emphasis on coding is not just that, oh, you got to learn web or you're going to whatever. No. It's that skill set that allows you to be really powerful. And then when you look at the direction that, say, journalism is going, the creator economy, I mean, Instagram and TikTok and like Gen Z, they are creating their content. They are storytellers. They're managing their brands from the day zero. And there's more and more powerful tools that are helping to reinforce this. So like there's a level, say 0 to 1, which is I'm familiar with different types of software. I can plug into different types of software. There is beyond that, which is like, well, what if I could influence and tweak these tools to be even more powerful for me? So I'm not emphasizing one skill. I think there's a lot of different skills, but really it is your confidence, your relationship to technology. And the last thing I'll mention is kind of an interesting story is one of my other co-founders created a application that then automatically gives his wife Instagram followers and turned her into a fashion Instagram influencer. It's not very advanced. You can look at a tutorial online and probably within a couple hours, you look at a template, but there's a big difference between people who are comfortable doing that and then they're able to create their own future opportunities, own reality. They rewrite the rules of what it takes to get from here to being really successful. Or you could be someone who is, not able to participate. So I think it's almost more of the spirit of what are you trying to achieve to unlock more future opportunities as opposed to this tech versus this other tech, which, changes over time.
Dwana, what more could places like NBC do to not just get women of color into these roles, but to support them so that once they're in them, they can stick around?
Word, I think, is key. So we should start with the fact that women, and more specifically women of color, are not a monolith. And so as we are looking at how do we support the communities that we want to bring into our organizations, there's going to be different interventions that we can focus on. As we are sprinting towards that class of 2025, let's recognize that those individuals are students that came straight from high school and might be at a 4-year institution, but it could also be the working mom that's taking care of her kids and taking classes online. And so those things to support both of those women are going to be different as far as how do we bring them in, how do we support their full needs. And then with regards to making sure that we continue to inspire them, I want to put it out there. Let's get rid of the term imposter syndrome. I want all of these amazing individuals to know that they belong in the places that they aspire to be. And although they may have not had that experience in the past or not done it before, and it could be a little bit scary, that's okay, but know that you belong there and they need to see all of us so that they can, what is the saying? If you see it, you can be it. So let's show them those visible representations of what can be, and they can imagine even more than that.
Al, what does the term soft skills mean? And how do those apply in your team's context?
So generally when we talk about soft skills, we're talking about the kind of non-technical skills. They're empathy and management and collaboration and what we were talking about earlier, interviewing skills, being able to communicate well, being able to write well, present well. And they're very universal in terms of the idea that you can come from many different perspectives or many different backgrounds and bring these as strengths to the way that you engage with your colleagues, with your customers, with your work. I think for us, and I would include the engineering side on this as well as the kind of product side of how we build software and platforms and technologies. We need that to be able to work at the scale and at the level of innovation and success for our businesses that we want to have. Because without those kind of soft skills, we're just making things because someone tells us to. And the way that we actually succeed is by being thoughtful, by being creative by understanding, like we were saying earlier, what our audiences need, what our diverse perspectives bring to this table. And those soft skills help us not just to kind of grease the wheels, but to bring forward what we need to do and focus on the right things.
I would love if everyone here could share maybe a personal anecdote, some of their personal career path. You know, what are some of the interesting twists and turns you took, moments where maybe you made a decision or you got an opportunity that you never expected? You know, how you ended up where you are. And you know, I remember when I was starting in my early career, getting advice from people to try to enjoy some of the ride. And while definitely planning was a part of it, to not, you know, look down on myself or get down on myself if I took jobs that maybe weren't on the top of my list, or I picked up skills that I never thought that I needed to worry about. Talk to me about some of the unexpected moments in each of your careers.
I can start. So, you know, we were kind of talking about just how to get started in web. As when I look back at my career, I think my career technically started when I was 15, had an internship in help desk. And I was learning web development on the side because I wanted to have my own website. And something at work came up and I was like, I can do that website. And that was an unexpected twist because I spent most of my day building computers for CEOs and things like that, and run into their office, trying to help them get their Internet Explorer link to show up on their desktop. So that definitely let me know that I could do that, which I didn't know was really an option. You know, and then later, you know, as you kind of just mentioned a plan, I never really had a plan for my career when I was coming up. Quite honestly, I was broke. Like our whole family, we were just broke, and I was like, what can I do that will get me out of that, right, and do something different? And so I went into school, into college, interested in art and math and Latin, because that was what we were doing in high school. But none of those made money, or I thought that at the time, although in retrospect they might have. But at the time I thought they're not going to make enough money quickly enough for what I need. So then I shifted gears into computer science. And you know, I ended up starting out as a back-end engineer, and, you know, decided I'm going to switch to front end about 8 months in, and I went to the NBA. Which I really never expected to work at. That was like, I'm a huge basketball fan, so that was like a dream job. And you know, ended up having to leave there because of the NBA lockout in 2011. It was just like random things would happen along my career path. And then, you know, I ended up staying a front-end engineer for about 10 years. And I think I did everything that I'd wanted to do as an engineer. Whether it be leading a team on a major initiative, building open source technology and frameworks. I got published. I did everything I wanted to do, and then I was like, what next? And I decided to give management a try, and that's where I came to NBC, and I've been doing that since. And, you know, kind of taking the big projects that come up, taking things like elections has kind of led me to where I am now. But a lot of interesting things along the way.
On my end, I wanted to just mention my parents got here from Cuba in 1960. They worked really hard. They were a low income family. My dad worked really hard to put us through college. But I had the opportunity to work on to study and train television production in a government-sponsored program. And I was able to get into a local station as a camera assistant. I started learning everything that I could, studio operation, control room operations, and I was 2 years into it, and they asked me if I wanted to direct the national newscast or the local newscast. And I said, yeah, for sure. I think I know how to do it. And I started directing, which is my passion. I directed news, entertainment, sports for over 21 years. And then I decided to get into management. I coordinated major high-level productions in entertainment, in addition to news, working on debates and elections. And I'm very happy that I got into this field. It's very rewarding, and it is a great experience that I've had throughout my long years in this industry.
I had a similar experience to John and Wayne in having a couple of pivots in my career in digital and in media. I was a designer and a product manager and a project manager and an engineer and a consultant at various points. And similar to what you've already heard, a lot of the changes I made were because I was curious and interested in other parts of the organization and the business. And I raised my hand and I said, I'm interested in that. And people wanted to give me a shot. And I ended up getting the chance to be a part of all of those different pieces of how we make things and how our content gets out there, which is very cool. So raise your hands. That's always a good one.
Jump in, go next. I was very fortunate to have been exposed to technology and computing as a child through my family, which I didn't realize until I was older was a very unique experience as a Black child, and majored in computer science when I went to undergrad, and changed my major my junior year from computer science because it was isolating and lonely. And I'm thankful that that change in major during that time in my studies did not lead me to a career path outside of technology. So had an amazing journey through tech. I was a planner, and so there's a saying, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. And the ironic thing was that I would plan my 3 and my 5 years and what I was going to do, and I would still end up somewhere else. But those plans set me on a path to work towards something. I never thought that I would be in the nonprofit space. I love tech and I love strategy and I love innovation and I love leading teams, but I also have a passion for increasing representation and advancing equity in technology. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity at this point in my journey to do both.
So it looks like I'm the last one. I'll try to not take too long. So when I was 5 years old, my father was incarcerated. We ended up becoming homeless, really low income growing up, was rural Maine was the background, and did well in math, well enough that I was able to get scholarships to go to school. And then when I got to school, I had the chip on my shoulder because I was behind everybody else. I didn't have the same teachers. I didn't have the tutors. I didn't have a lot of that stuff. So I saw those gaps. I knew I had to be aggressive to do something to stand out and to be able to have opportunities. So lots of crazy things I did when I was younger. Like I started this club where it created internship opportunities for other students. I didn't know anyone, but I know the other students in my class had connections to wherever their parents worked. So basically started a club to get myself internships when I was a freshman in college. Way of kind of hacking the system there. And started my first nonprofit when I was 19 years old. Again, I would always try to seek out who are the most talented people I can find around me. My co-founder at that time was this Black woman who was incredibly inspiring, charisma, intelligent, and I just want to learn as much as I could from her. That first nonprofit was really illuminating because within a couple of years, I'm speaking at Harvard Business School. My professors are asking me if they can have a job. They want to work for me. And I'm like, I'm supposed to learn from you. How are you asking me for a job? And it completely blew up my world. And I realized that entrepreneurship was something that you can create your own reality. You can work with the people you want to work with, and then you can decide what types of problems you want to solve that you're really excited about solving. From that first nonprofit, founded 2 additional nonprofits, founded 3 tech companies as well. I was trying to figure out, how do I scale impact? How do I understand systems? How do I make something work in a very meaningful way, but also really valuable for companies as well? So led me to tech startups, ended up raising money. And one of those companies ended up being the first one of the first Black founders in this accelerator. That company ended up getting pretty large, and then was eventually acquired by Twilio a couple years ago for a little over $3 billion. And then from there as well, looking at how all these different opportunities, low-income kid from rural Maine can then try to change the default pathways into success, because so much when you hear these stories, it's about luck. How can we rewrite the equation in education so that it's not you're getting lucky, but this is default. We've changed it so the default path is one where you're prepared to succeed and you're able to reach your full potential.
Thank you so much, not just to you, Michael, but to all of my wonderful panelists. It has been a pleasure hearing more about your personal stories and your pathways through this, fascinating field. I'm, of course, on the journalism side, but I am supported and get to collaborate with many of you. And so it's really exciting to see how all these worlds come together. So thank you so much.